Okay, cool. Adam, are you ready to go? I've got so many questions for you. I'm ready to dive in, and we've got a bunch
I was asking you a bunch of questions.
No. I like to control it, so.
You do.
Cool. So I just want to start off by saying thank you everyone so much for joining us today. I think pretty much everyone is muted at the moment. I'll probably keep you all muted probably until towards the end. Adam and I want to kind of jump into a lot of different topics. For those of you who are joining who don't know us, this is Adam Hergenrother. He is the founder and CEO of Adam Hergenrother Companies, which encompasses many different organizations, including Livian, which is our real estate company that is nationwide. The Founder The Force Multiplier, which is hosting this call today, which includes our book, our podcast, and our brand new community, a membership community that we just launched, as well as cohorts and additional coaching. We do a bunch of other things within real estate and leadership coaching and training as well. Adam has started his journey 15 years ago, and at least 15 years ago in business. 16 years ago, gosh, it's becoming 17 years or 16 years ago.
Seems like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. When he first got into real estate, I joined forces with Adam about 12 years ago in 2010. I'm the chief of staff of Adam Hergenrother Companies. We've worked together in a couple different capacities over those years, building many different companies along the way, some of which are still in existence and some of which are not, because that was just all part of the building the business and entrepreneurship journey along the way. So today we're going to dive into a little bit about what goes on behind the business. Obviously, you see where Adam has grown the companies to today, but there's a lot of stuff that happened along the way to get us to where we are today, and we want to dive into some of those topics. Obviously, behind the business is people. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to: is who are the people behind the business? They're the ones, and what goes into the people behind the business. It's about leading, it's about communication, providing clarity, building a really strong culture, and helping those people grow and transform. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about that today. And if we have some time at the end, we'll definitely open it up for questions. But right now I have all the questions. So before we get started, Adam, anything you wanted to add?
I think you did a good job.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is a big question I think that's really top of mind, obviously, right now for people is what type of leader is needed in 2023?
I think the first thing to think about that is I think everyone needs to see themselves as a leader. I don't really care what position or title that you have right now. We're in a time of kind of economic retraction, which requires everyone to step up and do more with less. Which means you're going to have to lead. And I think the first thing that leaders need to really understand is where their prioritizations of where their time is going. I think over the last couple of years, regardless of really whatever industry you're in, there was this whole organic growth phase that happened, where basically people bumped into sales, they bumped into money, they bumped into profit, and it actually made it feel like you were much better than you were. And I think that's happened for everybody. It's not wrong, it's not right. It's just kind of one of those things that was there. But I think in general, we all kind of thought that, like, I was doing a Kaplan teaching yesterday, and the owner of the company actually was like, yeah, the last 2 years felt like somebody, was having a dump truck and they dumped cash on my yard, right? And it's like, it doesn't feel like that anymore. And it's like, I think that was kind of the mentality of a lot of individuals was, wow, look at this. This is kind of organically, think about it from this angle. Organic growth is things that happen kind of effortlessly. They happen when you can stay in kind of your natural zone, things that you enjoy doing, things that come natural to you, very entrepreneurial and anything like that, right? You can kind of stay in those zones. What's happened though, over time is, particularly over the last probably 90 days, that world doesn't exist anymore. And for most people, the last 2 years, regardless of whatever line of business you were in, most likely you will not experience that type of organic growth in your life again. If you look at history, it'll probably be at least 40 or 50 years before that an event like that where the inflation gets so high actually happens again, which again was the late 80s last time. So I mean, what was that, 40 years ago? So I think we're in this kind of unprecedented. Now we're coming into this charter territory of, okay, which businesses can survive and thrive? I think you can thrive in this marketplace. You just have to understand how to actually do that. Right now, what leaders are looking for is a plan. Do you have a plan of how you are actually going to survive, thrive, grow? Because remember, in any retraction period, it's healthy. It's healthy for the world to retract. It's healthy for businesses and divisions to retract. And the reason why I say it is because every year, spring comes, flowers come in there, leaves go on trees, and then every fall they start to fall again and it looks bare, only to allow for more growth to come in, the right growth that then spurs in the spring. And it's the same cycles happen in business. Over time, they all happen the same way. So they flow up. You get this period of, let me try all of these different things because money's abundant for the most part. And so let me go put some money over here. I'll go make these couple extra hires over here. And you kind of just, Hallie doesn't like the word I use here, but you kind of get lazy. I don't really know what else to say it. It's like complacent might be a better word. I just see it as like, you just kind of get lazy with your expense management. You get kind of lazy with, accountability to results because they're kind of just happening. The overall result of profit's kind of happening. So you kind of just turn the other way so you don't have to deal with it. I don't know how that's kind of really what starts to happen. So as that world starts to kind of come down, we as leaders have to wake up and go, okay, how do we do more with less? And number one is, how do we really stay in our you can call it the 20%, right? Which is the Pareto principle for people who are not familiar with that. Just basically says 20% of my activities produce 80% of my results. And I think you almost have to take this to the extreme Pareto principle when you wake up and go, well, how does 10% of what I do translate into 90% of the results that I have? Which means that you're going to have to say no to a whole bunch of other things. And the other things could be important or are important, and they could make you money. But the thing is, they're not maximizing the outreach of the productivity that you have. They're not maximizing, let's say it's a scale from 0 to 100, doing something may produce a 10% out of 100 return. You need to be focused on the things that produce 90% out of 100 return. And so part of this is you developing your skills as a leader to understand this dynamics of the marketplace that we're in. And if you start to do that, what happens is you grow exponentially in about 6 months to a year, because what you'll refine the company to focus on what matters. And then when things start to expand again, which they always do, every industry goes, even you breathe in, you breathe out, your eyes open, they shut, your heart beats, everything has a rhythm to it. And so as the rhythm comes into contraction, smart businesses create efficiencies. They do more with less, they remove distractions. And so then when there becomes an extraction period, it's like you're a really highly intense, focused organization that is able to catapult with the expansion. And as that expansion occurs, you then start wildly seeing yourself grow. So the leaders of the next kind of, I would say just the 2 quarters are really going to be about, how do I make my team and myself the most efficient? How do I do more with less? How do I just remove things that aren't even important right now? Again, look, everything's important. I always kind of use this analogy. If you have kids, and I have kids I have 3 under 10. Well, Manal has kids, I have kids. Manal would say my kids are important, right? And I would say Manal kids are important, but I'm pretty sure at the end of the day, her kids are more important to her than my kids are to her. So it's not that they're not important, they're just more important. So that's what we have to look at in life. A lot of things, we wake up and we see things. There's a lot of things that are important. It's just, are you able to cut through it and find out what's really, really matters right now and put your energy, your focus, your capital, your resources there? Because at the end of this, in every industry, there will be kings and queens crowned. There will be kings and queens that are crowned because of their ability right now, today, to take action to create this type of organization that it's like you're creating a trampoline effect. So then when you're able to do anything, you're able to really expand beyond that. But this is also a time you've got to get real with yourself and with your team. This is not a time to lollygally around, right? It's a made up word, but it's fine. It shows creativity. But like, it's just not a time to just hang out. And I'm not saying you need to add hours to your day. I've never once actually said that. Now, there may be a case that if you're only working a minimal number of hours, you may have to. I'm not saying that. if that's an individual thing, it's actually irrelevant, the hours. I like to ask a much better question. I like to ask the question of how do I get better in the hours I'm willing to work? And that's really the thing that comes in there is how do I get better at the hours I'm willing to work? And what you really find out, that comes down to how well you can lead yourself. Because leadership, the myth of leadership is not about leading others. Some people think leadership is leading others. The truth of leadership is that you lead yourself and then you're able to lead others. If you're unable to lead yourself, you can't effectively longer term lead others. Now, you may be able to lead others in organic times, and maybe for short bursts, you can outwork your thinking or the way you perceive the world. That may happen for a burst, but over extended periods of time, 2, 3, 4 years, that will show up and you'll falter, or you'll just wake up scared every day of like, I have no plan and I don't know how to do anything. And so you want to remove all of that, right? And then lean into exactly what you need to. And if there's fear in your organization, if there's hesitation, just the thing that I would tell you here is just lean into it more. Just literally just lean directly, just be as vulnerable and transparent and radical as you can. And as you lean into that, it actually starts getting it off of you and starts putting it on the whole organization and go, how do we solve this? Because the other truth about leadership versus the myth about leadership is people think, at least I thought this early on in my life, I thought that if I didn't have all the answers when a leadership came in there, I thought I was failing as a leader. So I would kind of like make things up that I could early on to make it seem like I had the answer, when the reality is it probably worked. It just didn't work as effectively as it could. So at some point you kind of wake up and you go, all right, you know what? I don't need to actually be the one with the answer. I just got to be the one that helps facilitate for the organization to find the best answer and then come together and support the organization, whatever capacity that means for me. I mean, that's really, so when we think about leaders, I want the echoing of what I just said, the structure of how you think about leadership needs to fundamentally change as you come into 2023. And that first is that you're all a leader. I don't care what position, I don't care where you are, it doesn't matter to me. You are a leader right now. And then you have to be very clear on what are my priorities that actually move things forward, because everyone has a priority that they naturally want to go have fun with, but that may not actually be the best for the organization. And so I went and talked about organic growth. In a retraction period, it's the opposite. It's basically you have to be extremely focused. You have to put effort in. And here's the hardest one for people to hear, and I'm going to expand on this for a second. You have to do things that come unnatural to you. And this is what people don't like to hear. And really, it's not that they don't like to hear that. It's they battle in their own head over this last concept right here. Because what you should be focused on, like if I asked everybody on this call or listening to this recording, if like, what is if somebody were to come in here and give you a robot, it was the most intense robot ever, and it could do anything you wanted to make your organization successful, what would you program it to do? And I've never once not been in a situation where somebody didn't tell me how to make their organization do it. And then, so then I just asked the question, well, are you doing that? And they go, well, no. So then that's what I mean, right? We all kind of know what we should be focused on, but then what you're really saying is, well, I know the robot should do that, but I don't really want to do that, or just it doesn't really come natural to me to do those different things. So in a retraction period, the goal is to actually focus, be efficient, and you're going to have to do some things that come unnatural. Now, the good thing about doing things that become unnatural is they can become habits in your life. And this is where I like to think about is business building is mastering the boredom of success. It's mastering the boredom of success, period. The minute you can master the boredom, which is doing things that come unnatural, just mastering the ordinary day in and day out. Look, how often do you see professional football players swimming on Mondays, tennis on Tuesdays, golf on Wednesdays, and they play football on Thursdays? No, they don't do that. They wake up every day and throw a football. I'm pretty sure that's pretty rudimentary for them. They can do that, but they wake up every day with a very intense focus on what's going to move the needle the most. And so they have to do things that become unnatural, then it becomes habits. And that's why when you talk about mastering the boredom, that can be a habit itself. It's not that you walk around bored. It's not like you walk around going like, I don't like anything that I'm doing. It's not that at all. The reality is once you actually lean in to mastering the boredom, an immense amount of creativity and joy actually sparks within inside you. And that in itself allows you to actually take that energy and apply it into your organization. The only reason why you don't feel that joy and excitement and creativity towards that is because you are in a situation where you are fighting yourself every day to do these things. So if every day you woke up and you literally took your left arm and you fought with your right arm, you'd never really win. So once you lean into it, you kind of just master the boredom of it. You drop both hands, you lean into it, and you will become effective at what you're doing. But it starts with your thinking, right? About how am I going to approach this? How am I going to step up and actually approach this? Is this a situation that I'm able to handle? And of course you are. Just lean into it. It's just money. It's just people. It's just things. It's like I always like to think about money is it means nothing, but it means everything. It's the relationship to it. It's how you use it. It's different things. Because tomorrow we could all wake up and an asteroid hit us. Money would mean nothing to anything. Or if you were just stranded in a mountain, money would mean nothing to you, right? It just wouldn't. There'd be nothing there to it. So money is just something that we've created that has value because of the trust in a system that we uphold, which is why crypto is such an interest. We're going off topic, but anyway, so you get the point, right? Like the thing is you have to, the structure of leadership today has to be about efficiency, things that become unnatural so they become habits, and they have to come to a point where you realize we're going to do more with less. It's going to feel different because it's not organic, but you know what? In the end of this, we're going to come out as a much stronger organization, and we're going to thrive, and we're going to be the king or the queen of the hill in whatever industry we are in because of our ability to take the action that nobody else wants to do. And that's really the fundamental question of leadership in 2023. That answer that, Hallie?
Sure. Yes, it did. And it would not be a conversation with you if you didn't go a little bit off topic. So, you stay true to your brand. So thank you.
It's true.
Okay. So I heard you obviously talking a lot about like the efficiencies and prioritization and having to really even reevaluate some of your team. We've talked about that too, like reevaluating what your team members are doing and getting really, really clear on that. So whether the company is growing or because of what's going on in the market or both, obviously companies need to reevaluate what is happening with their team, and the market and or the company are going to demand different things from people at different times. How do you go about having those conversations with team members about the positions, or whether or not it's no longer a fit, or that we need to revamp an entire position or shift to different divisions? Because I think that's going to happen probably more often than not, and especially in the first 2 quarters. How would you how do you want to teach people how to handle those conversations? What do they need to know?
I think the first thing is to understand that it's not a weakness. If you look around the world right now, there are massively successful companies doing layoffs. And I'm not saying you need to or you shouldn't. I'm just giving you an indication that people that are doing that, because what they're recognizing is they're actually removing divisions that they've hired people for or different things that don't actually matter. That's actually what's happening. And when the companies that are doing really well and they start to cut and then they start to see a contraction, they're still doing well. They go, this whole division over here, or whatever that is, this whole project we're going on, we need to scrap that. And so what happens is those people get laid off, right? Unfortunately, and then they can put them back in the workforce. But that's actually what the government wanted. Understand that, like the Jerome Powell wanted businesses to do exactly what it's doing because it actually had to slow down inflation. So just fundamentally understand why these things are taking place in the first, because I think as a leader, sometimes you can go, man, I can keep them over here and we can see if it works. Mm-hmm. But now what you have to actually do is that's not the right leadership decision. And that's why I'm just bringing these in, because the whole point is it's not about can you afford it, it's is it effective? And remember, Jerome, when he started doing this from day one, he goes, we want to basically remove 1.6 million jobs from businesses. That's what the number that they set out to do. Because if you haven't noticed, over the past 2 years, how in price sensitive have you been to things? When's the last time like a year ago, did you walk into a grocery store and look at the price tag of a bottle of wine or something you wanted to buy? No, you just kind of bought it. Like you just bought things you wanted to. And that's how I think people treated their businesses. But now businesses are waking up, and this is the ones that are actually doing wealthy. We'll talk about the ones that are not in a second, but those are looking at divisions or organizations or little pods that are working on different things. They're recognizing like, we can't put any energy on this, so let's remove them. So that's the first point. It's not a weakness, it's actually smart business. Now, you don't understand that there's sensitivities to people having to get laid off. That's a whole other conversation. But from the overall understanding of the construction of a business, you've brought people on, the division no longer is there, you have to do it. The greatest example of this, by the way, is, and we'll actually answer the whole question, Hallie, but trust me, in 83, 85, whatever it was, Steve Jobs was asked to leave Apple. He left. In 1996, he was asked to come back. Apple, by the way, 96, was hemorrhaging over 1.1 billion dollars in cash. They were losing 1.2 billion dollars in cash. At the time, Steve hadn't been in there for at least 10 years, and Apple was working on over 200 different variations of projects, over 200. Steve came in, and Apple had 90 days left of operating cash flow in order before then they actually probably either went bankrupt or something else happened, they shut down the company altogether. They had 90 days, 90 days. So Steve came in, by the way, for free. He paid himself $1, right? And he came in there and he said, all right, in the first week, and I don't know the exact time, but it was really, really quickly. Within days, he came in and narrowed the 200 different projects down to 10. So all the people that were associated with the 190 other projects were exited into the industry. Then there was left with 10. Out of those 10, they whittled it down to one, which was the iPod. And they said, we're going in on the iPod. Everyone's going in there. So again, weeded away, kept people that could actually go on this project, removed all the other distractions and focused on that. Within 1 year, Apple ended up with a $380 million surplus profit from their organization. It was like a $1.5 billion swing in 1 year. And what that illustrates, people forget, it's not just Steve. What he did was he repositioned the organization to focus on one thing that mattered the most. You're actually in a more relevant time. If anybody hasn't seen Eisner returning back to Disney, it's a really fascinating story right now, because Disney, what Eisner came back publicly and said, Iger, sorry, I don't know why I said Eisner. Iger came back and said, Disney has lost its soul. The company has lost its soul. Mm-hmm. And so the thing about that is what he really meant was it's lost its focus. Disney was a place where magic happens. And they were doing things where not magic happened, right? And that's why the company started suffering. So he came back in there and was doing the exact same thing that Steve Jobs did, which is eliminating all the other things that don't matter except for these core components that where magic happens. So just you can see the example. That's where leadership comes into play, is about the focusing of this. So the conversations, how I would start these is, again, we use a tool called a 1-3-5, right? It's what's your one main goal? And there can be multiple things in that one goal. But the reality is that, like, for one of our organizations, for Livian, the one main goal, it's 100, it's 20, and it's 16. And what those numbers represent is 100 new verticals, this new divisions, new teams in there, right? The 20 is the 20% profit margin for every one of our organizations for teams there, minimum. And then the 16 is the number of transaction each individual agent must do on an annual basis. So we measure those three things. Then everything else underneath that is a priority. And for the overall, and so basically it's a 1, and then you'd have like integrations, finance, growth, right? And maybe like industry as like your priorities. And each one of those priorities should be able to leak into the overarching goal. And then underneath each priority, you have strategies on how you're going to achieve the goal. So like one of the priorities could be agent attraction or agent growth. And that's 100 new verticals. That's a priority. Great. Then underneath there, what are the strategies of how we actually go and do this? And how do we track that every single one? So we use those. Part of that is you get very clear on what your plan is. That's number 1. Then you go in there and you meet with your executive team or your leadership team, or whatever that looks like for you. And you go, let's go through everybody that you lead. Let's just go through everybody. That could be one person or 500, right? And probably not leading 500, but you get my point, right? There could be multiple people there. and you just sit down and you go, Hallie, tell me about John over here. What are they focused on? And the goal isn't that, like, you don't come in there and say, look, we're going to go let people go, because that's not what and then people start vying for their jobs. That's not what you're doing. And actually, it's not even the point. You may not even let anybody go. The point is when you ask John, what is John doing over here? Hallie's got to be able to tell me what John's focused on. And one of two things is going to happen. One, they don't actually know what John's focused on. So then you get very good clarity on that. And it helps the team. Or number two, what they are focused on, you in individual, that me and Hallie would recognize, well, that's probably not the best use of their time, right? Okay, great. How can we repurpose their time? How can we allocate them over here? Well, they're a great asset to the organization. Perfect. Then what's our main focus? Sales. Okay, great. How can they help with sales? What role could they take in sales? So you just literally go through every part of the organization with each leader. I would do it individually versus a big group, just because it's easier that way. You go in these individual things, and then you're basically repurposing the entire organization in a couple hours. It's really what you're doing. And then the leader will go in there and create their own action plans with each individual. They'll transition them over. They have those initial conversations with them. And if that's you doing that, if you have 3 people on your team, then you just do the same thing. Okay, what's the one main goal? Do you even know what that is? A lot of people don't. Like, a lot of people have an idea of what their goals are, but what is your goal? What's your roadmap to get there? How do you show somebody a piece of paper and say, this is how we're going to accomplish it, right? If you were going to go run a marathon, you wouldn't go out there and say, I think I'm just going to go run a few days a week, right? Well, I guess you could. You just wouldn't really have an effective run, right? Just like you have a marginal business if you run without a plan. It doesn't mean you may not have a business. It's just kind of haphazard. You don't really know how you treated success. You're also at the whims at any point in time of the organization kind of falling apart, because at least it feels that way, because you don't have an actual plan how to do that. Versus you went out there and said, okay, great, here's what we're going to do. You've got 16 weeks to prepare for this marathon. Week 1, you're going to do Monday 1 mile, Tuesday 1.5 miles. Wednesday you're going to run 4 miles, but walk 2, right? Then Thursday is off day. Friday you're going to go back to doing 2.5 miles, right? You just wake up every day and go, this is what I got to do. That's how your organization should be operating right now, is everyone wakes up and goes, I know exactly what I do. And if you have multiple divisions of people, I mean, there's probably 800-900 people in our organization. So how do you have so that everybody understands with it, right? Right after this call, Hallie and I are going into a 90-minute, basically monthly meeting that we go into, where every employee is on there, so they can hear everybody going over their 1-3-5s like we just described, so that everybody in the whole organization knows exactly what the priorities are. And if somebody's working on something that's not a priority, they should stop or ask for clarity. That's the whole point of keeping everybody involved here, is it keeps the whole organization rowing together. So that's how you start and initiate the conversations effectively for change right now.
Yeah, and also it's not just knowing the priorities or the goals, but also making sure that each person understands how what they are doing does contribute to that big. I mean, people want to know the work that they do is contributing to a large. And if you do this exercise and talk about the why along with it, it can be incredibly helpful, I think, for the entire organization. And one other thing that you were, I forgot it. Oh, talking about when you kind of go through this audit and maybe you are doing layoffs, you talked about like repositioning. Sometimes it really is just about redoing job descriptions, and like maybe you're taking one person and yes, you're repositioning them, or even just tweaking their job description a little bit, but being really transparent. And again, that's why we talked about in the beginning, like a leader in 2023 needs to be like radically transparent and vulnerable about what's going on in the world, in the business, because these changes are going to be happening in real time. And it's helpful for employees' morale and just for their general understanding if you're talking about why these things are happening and how they fit into the whole and how you're going to move forward.
I found is most people are really wanting and willing to work. Like, it's not that they don't really want to do it. I think you'll know if you have inefficient people, and that's a whole other conversation. But when you wake up and somebody's willing to put in a reasonable amount of effort, right, to the organization, like your everyday person, right? You're gonna have leaderships that put in abundant more energy in there. But if you have a big organization, a reasonable amount of energy, maybe above the average, of what somebody's out there. So you understand that. Then it's all about just directing them to what to actually do. And that's the whole job of a leader, by the way. That's it. That's your job. Your job isn't to do somebody else's job. Your job is to, if something's not working, it's being willing to go in there and say, this isn't working. We either have the wrong priorities, the wrong people, the wrong focus on something, and you've got to be willing to go in there and look at it and go, we got to change things up. Just like Hallie said, redo job description, do these different things. If it doesn't work, I mean, this is what you're seeing businesses do right now effectively, right? I mean, I get Morning Brew, right? And I love that organization. I love their morning. If anybody gets those emails, but I even saw, I sent it to Hallie, I even saw them, like they were laying off. They actually put it in their own newsletter as like, I thought it was good that they were like, yeah, even us, like, you know, we grew a lot and we grew too fast. Now we've got to reposition ourselves. So we're amongst the same. CNN is laying people off. That's what I'm saying. These companies doing well. It was Time Warner, like there's these, and then they mentioned, well, including your Morning Brew, right, is laying people off because the ad revenue is slid or whatever it was, and different projects didn't make sense. That's all natural. So just understand, it's not a weakness, it's nothing, it's just there. You may honestly also have to, like, if you remove a department, you may have to go invest into other people that are going to be a new priority for what it is. So it could just be repurposing your money, right? Of like, if you have, say, I have $10,000 a month to spend, and you've got two people over here that are at $10,000, you may need to let them go, because it's not that there's nothing wrong with them. It's just maybe that's not actually getting it done. And you go over here and you hire one person who just does all of it, right? And it's a better fit or better priority, especially if the organization has shifted. And that's not anybody's fault except for yours. So congratulations, take responsibility for that. But this is what you do. I mean, it's just that these are the reasons why nobody else wants to be the leader, the ultimate leader, is because you actually have to make these decisions. And they're challenging, they're hard, they're not easy, but it's all about, this is the effective nature of being a leader.
Yeah. And I mean, I know that we're really emphasizing that these things are happening right now, but these are also things that, as you just mentioned, is just part of leadership. And the more you do them consistently, one, they get easier, but also you're just constantly optimizing your organization and constantly like top grading talent and constantly just creating more and more efficiencies, and not doing it every 5 years, but rather doing it, you know, every 5 months. Yeah. And that, I think, does help the company grow faster and more efficiently and more effectively over a shorter period of time. Okay, let's switch focus just a little bit, because obviously we're super passionate about the partnership between a founder and a leader and Force Multiplier. So talk to me a little bit about why you feel that partnership is important, and why perhaps that partnership is more important than ever right now, considering what is going on in the markets and in the world.
Well, I mean, I can speak to it from my own experience. I mean, the reality is I'm only good at like one thing, and that maybe even 3/4 of a thing, right? And other than that, like I understand I have a lot of weaknesses, and you have a lot of strengths, more strengths than I do, that support my weaknesses. And so when we go out there to set out to do one job, which is how you and I like to look at this, it's one job. I'm just doing a part of it, and you're doing a different part of it. And so right now it's more important, like even this morning, right? Just as an example, I sent an email to Hallie and I said, look, we're about to go into this 90-minute presentation. I need you to be taking notes, because it's something I won't do, on and making sure that we bring all the 155s together and have one organizational one. I will lead it, but you need to be the one making sure that it comes together for what these things are. And so that's that partnership. Again, we're doing the same goal, the same directive, the same clarity, the same job. It's just different parts of it. And right now it's more important, if you see the theme, to make sure what you both are working on is extremely important to the organization, right? And so that has to be the priority between you and your Force Multiplier, is what are we working on together to create the most efficiencies here? And that's really where it's going to start. And that's why it's so efficient. So that I was talking to actually a new leader in our organization yesterday, and they said, you know, I found myself like on a deadline, and then like I've never had a Force Multiplier, and all of a sudden like I realized that I'm doing like I'm sending emails, and I spent 3 hours sending emails to people about this council I'm trying to get people on, and like I had to get out and I had no one else to do it, like, and now it cost me a whole conversation with some of my team members that needed me more than me doing this, and I could have allocated that time. I was like, this is exactly the point of why you need to read this book, right? Like, is because and he has, but like he's like, yeah, it's totally. And so it's like about getting that Force Multiplier there to basically handle that aspect of your life, so you can stay in the zone where you absolutely need to right now.
considering everything that is, I mean, we talked about, there's layoffs and all these things that are happening. I mean, is it situational, or is it just maybe, would you recommend people hire an EA right now or a chief of staff, or is it completely dependent on their business and what's going on? Or is that one of those efficiencies that may not be worth it right now?
I think you should. I think you should always hire. This actually individual was looking at making an EA and a chief of staff hire. And what I said to them, I said, you need an EA. You don't need a chief of staff right now. I said, because the reason why you don't is because you don't know how much that EA is actually going to take off your plate. You're assuming that you need 2 people to do all this job because you have this enormity complex in your business. But the reality is one really good hire will take away 80% of what you just told me that you needed done from 2 people. So you don't need both right now for that particular situation. I said, plus you also have this other individual who you can shift a little bit into that priority to make that happen. So I think you got to look at your own business. This is where it may honestly be where you lay 2 or 3 people off over here, but you hire an EA to support you to stay super, super efficient in the things that you need to do. Again, it was the first hire that I ever made in my organization. And I still believe it's, and how this too is the best hire that somebody can make for a leader, so they can maximize their reach, they can maximize their influence and their potential of where they are. Because like me, like you have just a ton of ideas in here, like you have a bunch of things, but what they're also a really effective EA is going to do is they're going to tell you when those ideas need to be kind of hidden, or they're going to take them and put them in the knapsack for a later lunch so that we can pull it out later on. And we just don't need to right now. But that's the nature of entrepreneurs, is to create. Like it's like you'd be weird to see an owl eating grass and a deer eating a chipmunk, right? It's just that's not their nature to do that. Entrepreneurs' nature is to create. There needs to be a governor there. Otherwise, you'll whiplash your organization or create 200 different things and lose $1.3 billion. That's what happens when it's not regulated. And an effective EA and or chief of staff, what they will do is that really part of the thing? And over time, like Hallie will know if I bring something up and she says that, she might not even have to ask me. If I bring it up again, like, well, what else are we gonna, how is this important? She starts drilling me with questions. And then I'll either push back and she'll realize and understand why it's important that we do that. Or most likely what happens is, yeah, you're right. We don't need to do this right now, but man, I really want to. And that's that lesson that you have to learn of, okay, we can't until we pass go over here.
Yeah. And I mean, I think just because we've worked together for so long, I feel like that was one of the big lessons that I learned probably even early in my career, is that I was so excited to do everything, just as excited as you were to do everything. And sometimes I hadn't yet built that muscle of pushing back or saying no. This is like probably in the early days. But when we did start getting more strategic, and I started questioning or slowing down or pushing back a little bit more, then we just kind of continued to narrow that focus. But it was hard for me too, because I was just like, let's do everything. This sounds so great.
That's that unnatural focus, by the way, that I just talked about. Because again, entrepreneur's nature is to create, and you love to create. The unnatural feeling is to actually stop doing that to make sure things are moving along, which is also why I kind of fired myself from every position, because I know that I'm not the most effective manager or leader. I'm just not. I can do it for short bursts. I'm just not that great at it. I will get frustrated, and then that's not helpful for an organization. So I need to surround myself with other people that are really effective leaders or managers. I'd use that word, right? Of like managing the system, the process, the event, the details of those things, versus for me, I'm just not effective at doing that. And I actually get like paralysis, like I won't do it. It's funny. I actually feel that I'm inherently lazy when it comes to anything that anybody else can do for me. If it comes to things that nobody else can do for me, like nobody can exercise for me. Nobody can meditate for me. Nobody can work on my inner growth for me. Nobody can work and basically lead at the level, not the level of me is not the right way of saying it, but it's just there's certain decisions that need to stay with me, right? Those things I become laser focused on, and I will be the most relentless person ever on those things. However, the minute it comes to anything else that somebody else can do, it's like I just shut down. Like, I don't know how else to say that. Like, I just get super lazy with there, and it's like I won't even do it. And that's why I need people around me to support that.
So if you fired yourself from every job.
I will, hold on, I will. But I will say is I have no problem running into battle, if you will, and leading the charge up something that nobody else wants to do either. That to me is fun, right? Like I can do that all day long, where a lot of people don't ever want to be that first person running out in that field. But I will do that all day long. And so I think that's where entrepreneurs understand is that's your role. You will bring the organization there. That's what you just need to keep doing. So stay there.
Yeah, well, you may have just answered my question. I said, if you fired yourself from every job, then what is your job?
Well,
or is there anything else?
Well, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, it's vision, right? You got to make sure that the organization understands the vision of where everything is, right? You have to understand that you have to make sure that people have clarity in direction. It doesn't mean you need to provide the clarity. You could. It just means that everyone, you need to make sure that people in the organization, you do. Right. Somebody said something to me probably like a month ago and actually kind of hit me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. They didn't mean it as like a negative comment, but it kind of hit me because it was true. And they're like, well, you're the CEO of this organization, so you tell me. And I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. I guess I am. And it's like, they're like, I don't have clarity and you're the CEO. You need to provide that to me. And again, they didn't say it negatively, but it definitely hit me because it was true. I was like, man, I guess I'm actually lacking right now on that. And so again, that's when I had to step back and go, you're right, it's good. I let it go. It bothered me for about 14 seconds. Then I moved on and then figured out how do I take that and actually get more people clarity. And so that's just become the last 30 days. That's just been my focus, is to bring clarity to every single person. And it really helped me. So I appreciate that person making that comment.
Okay.
And then the last thing, so you have vision, you got clarity and direction. And the third thing is just decisions. And that's just your job, is to make decisions. Remember, leaders' job is to make decisions. Their work product is a decision. I mean, Jeff Bezos, he had a few things going on in his time, right? I mean, the guy talked about how he was up at 4:30 every morning, slept 8 hours, was home for dinner. Like, again, like you would think that Jeff is just work. I'm sure he was pretty intense, but he's like, look, my entire job was really over by 10 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, my entire job was to make 3 quality decisions every morning before 10, and my day was done. So think about that, right? A guy that runs a decently sized organization, right? I mean, they've got like a 1.5 million employees. I mean, that's ridiculous, by the way, right? And at the same time, his job was to make 3 quality decisions. You know what I think is funny? I think even like Howard Schultz, right, coming back to Starbucks, like I always look at these lessons in leadership, because these guys, what they wanted out, but what they realized is like they were the ones making really good decisions every day. And then when you bring somebody else in there, the decision framework is different. So they start making different decisions, and it actually pulls the organization to a spot what's really kind of unhealthy. And that's what happened with Disney. That's what happened with Apple. Right. And so like what a leader really does really, really well is just keep the organization rowing in the same direction, the vision, the clarity, and then making these decisions that all support those things as well. Hopefully you can see that. Like that's fundamentally what you do.
One thing I'm going to add to that, and maybe wonder what your perspective is on there, but the best leaders are able to create even better leaders.
Yes.
So did Howard, Bob, Steve fail in that regard?
Well, I don't think Steve did, because Steve in the beginning, in the early 1980s, was not a quality leader. Like he was just built on simplicity, and he built an awesome product. However, when he came back, he was much more mature. And I have to say, before his death and his impending death for 6 years, he created probably the largest succession of an organization that we've seen to date, right? I mean, Tim Cook went in there and everyone thought Apple was not going to survive, and it's thrived. I mean, it's done really, really well. So that was a wonderful succession from there. I honestly, I'm not saying it can't be done. I just think it's incredibly difficult to replace the capacity of some of these individuals, right? And I'm not saying that's me. I think people could replace me. I'm talking about people like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or Iger. Like, I mean, these guys are incredible leaders. They wake up to do these, right?
I was going to say, whether or not you agree with Jack Welch's leadership style. I mean, even GE is
exactly
significantly different after his. I think they're selling off divisions right now.
Yes, they are.
So significantly different. Yeah. Okay. All right. We got like 10-ish minutes left, I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. So get ready. What is the one book that you recommend to everyone?
The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer.
I'm wondering how many of these I could have answered on my own.
Yes.
Okay, I was going to ask you, what's one piece of advice you could have given to your 25-year-old self? What would it be? But I think a lot of people ask that question. So what I'd rather hear you answer is, what is the one piece of advice you would have given to yourself in year one of your entrepreneurial journey, year one of business?
How would you answer that for me, Hallie? Since you're
Learn to hire better.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely
That's a quick answer.
probably not the right one. My in year one of my business, I don't think I didn't hold my money as highly accountable as I should. And I wish I had done a better job holding my money accountable to everything, and honestly not increasing my lifestyle, which wasn't extravagant in year one, but like I increased it even by 15 grand or whatever it was, which I didn't really need to do. Right. And so I think for me, if I had actually just not done that, I think I think the organization would have grown faster because you could have got out there and made more hires.
Yeah, it's really.
I also like in my business journey, this is just for me, I walked a line for 4 or 5 years, man, where it really could have gone one or two ways. Like, I'm serious. Like I took risks without any regard to the consequences. I just did. Like I remember walking out of a closing one time when I was building a $16 million building, and the attorney looked at me and he goes, well, how are you going to sleep at night? Hell, what are you talking about? They're like, there's no way for me taking on this type of debt and project for the first time, like that I would be able to sleep. And I hadn't even thought about it. Like I don't know if it was good or bad, but like I hadn't even thought about it.
Is that like naivete, or is that
I don't know. It could have been arrogance, definitely could have been. And again, that's why I tell people early on, like, man, I walked for about 4 or 5 years. I walked the line. If things had hit, I also started my business in 2005, 6. So the market was really bad. So I learned how to do more with less. And I always felt that my own ability could get me out of things. Well, what started getting scary though, was when my business started getting larger than me. And there was no way Adam's income could effectively get him out of this. That becomes a different whole organization as you start to grow. So I would have just held my money more accountable that way.
Okay, that's awesome. What's one thing that you will always splurge on no matter what?
Gear.
Okay, like skis?
Like gear. Like I love gear. Like like gear, like it's like skiing gear, skiing equipment, skinning, mountain biking, graveling. Like it's dangerous. Like you literally get me in like mountain hops, and like I walk out of there every time I can't walk in there without buying something. So it's like the gear for like physical activity is something I will always continue to splurge on, and it's like it's bad.
Okay, but I mean, it's a good investment, right?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, it's not really a good investment. It's like, I don't need it to go exercise. That's your thing that you're saying. I mean, you don't need, like, I have 13 pairs of skis, 6 of them I bought this year. Like, I don't need, so it's like, it's a little bit of a problem.
Okay,
I will say, like, I don't have a very lavish necessary lifestyle necessarily for the income that I make. So I can easily afford it, but like, it's still like, it's that, to answer that question, that's what I splurge on.
Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite thing about working with me? Did you know I was going to ask that one? I'm kidding, but I also want to know.
I think I think there's a I don't know if there's a one favorite thing. Well, I think if you want an answer, the one is who you are. Right. That would be the answer to it if you just wanted one answer. If you wanted me to expand on that, it would be that you're always there. I can always trust you. I can always make sure that you're going to get things done that you say you're going to do. And I know that you're always going to have the loyalty in the organization, including me, at your heart, whenever anything that you're doing. So that'd be my answer.
Thank you. What's your favorite flavor or brand of seltzer water?
Well, that's easy. It's black cherry for Polar. I will say a close second right now is Waterloo. Waterloo is, I like it because it's a BPA can free, BPA free can. And I really like Waterloo as well too. But yeah, seltzer. If I could have gone back, actually, if you said like my first year of business, I probably would have invested in the seltzer. Because
Yeah.
15 years ago, seltzer was not like it is. There was like Paraguay, whatever it was, like around. And nobody liked that. It was a plastic bottle, shook up all the plan. Like nobody drank that. Like that was for old people. Now all of a sudden, like seltzer is like larger than anything, right? I mean, man, if you could have found that early on, that's
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that too. All right, what are you most looking forward to in 2023?
to watching how efficient organizations get from in particular our organization gets, and the kind of synergy that comes from everybody rowing in one singular direction, and also having we've as an organization has never had as many leaders as we do right now in our organization, and leading through freaking awesome people is awesome and challenging. So that's really that's it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm super excited for all of that as well.
Well, it's funny because the larger organization gets, the more leaders you have. It's funny because it actually gets easier and harder in the same way, right? Like it's easier because they go out and do things, but it's harder because they're powerful leaders and they all have a different perspective on how it should be done. And so you're going, whoa, like I get on one meeting, they're telling me this, I get on the next meeting, they're telling me, I'm going, you're both right, actually. Like, that's the funny thing.
Well, and they take so much ownership over their own division, which is the amazing part. And therefore, they're also driving their own agendas, which is also fantastic, but can create that conflict. Okay, cool. So anything else you want to leave the group with?
No, go have fun. Stop taking yourself so seriously and go have a lot of fun in 2023. I mean, you're going to die anyways in a very short period of time. So you might as well go out and enjoy whatever it is that you're doing and lean into it. So just stop taking yourself so serious.
Awesome. Thank you. It would not be a call with Adam without talking a little bit about death. So
Exactly.
thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We will send out a recording. If you have any other questions that we didn't maybe talk about today, please shoot me an email and I will absolutely get back to you. And have a great holiday season, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.